Extremely disturbing, Sydney. The Aiken County Sheriff says Javeayah's parents dissolved her body using chemicals and then poured the rest into a reservoir. What was recovered was immediately sent off for DNA analysis. The sheriff saying this is by far the most difficult and emotionally taxing investigation his office has ever worked.
In my 37-year career in law enforcement, I've never, ever heard of anything so horrific.
Before there was an investigation, there was an ordinary Tuesday evening in Aiken, South Carolina. A 4-year-old girl in her backyard, a mother in the kitchen, a chicken coop she liked to play near. Nothing about it, on its surface, suggested anything but a normal summer night. At just before 9 o'clock, that changed. Michilae Harris called 911. She told dispatchers her daughter had been playing outside while she cooked dinner, and when she went back out to check on her, Javeayah was gone. She described what the little girl was wearing: pink Minnie Mouse pajamas, pink beads braided into her hair. She mentioned, almost in passing, that Javeayah may have had some developmental concerns, though nothing had ever been formally diagnosed. And she mentioned something else, something that seemed at the time like an unrelated detail. She was 39 weeks pregnant.
Who could do such a terrible thing to such a beautiful child? Such an innocent child.
This is heartbreaking for anyone who's followed this case. It's heartbreaking for our office.
Investigators saying her own parents confessed to Javeayah's killing days after they faked her disappearance.
I will not refer to them as mom and dad or mother or father. They don't deserve that title.
The Aiken County Sheriff says that Michilae Harris and Javeayah Harris went to extreme lengths to cover their tracks.
Our information reveals the use of corrosive chemicals and other tools that were used to accelerate the destruction of her little body.
In a live stream, upstate community activist Tracy Fant was on the parents' Aiken property just days before authorities said they linked the two to destroying their daughter's remains.
That smell is strong too, y'all. I'm not lying. I describe everything I'm seeing: the burnt mattress, the burnt clothes, the burnt barrel, the chicken coop, everything. I mean, and it was like the smell was so overwhelming that I don't feel like I'll ever forget it. I'll never forget that smell.
The growing memorial, Minnie Mouse stuffed animals and balloons, is what brought Fant to their front door.
And
within hours, Aiken County had mobilized one of the largest search efforts the community had seen in years. Drones in the air, search dogs on the ground, FBI agents joining local deputies, more than 200 first responders combing thousands of acres in a heat wave pushing the heat index past 100 degrees. Volunteers showed up who had never met Javeayah Harris, because a missing 4-year-old is the kind of emergency an entire town responds to without being asked twice. For 4 days, that search would define this case in the public eye, a race against time, a community holding its breath, hoping. What nobody searching those fields yet understood was how long that race had actually been over. If you're new here, this is the kind of case we take our time with. Verified facts, no speculation, no shortcuts. Subscribe now, because what happens over the next 24 hours in this investigation is unlike anything you've seen in a missing child case, and you'll want to be here when it unfolds.
The memorial outside Javeayah Harris's home continues to grow. Your Sydney Palmer joining us from there today. Sydney, this has really impacted the entire community.
That's right, Dana. I mean, we were here around noon earlier today, and in the hour that we were here, we saw about 40 people come up to the house, drop off candles, stuffed animals, balloons, and things like that. And someone was actually here earlier who saw this memorial get started, and she said that it all started with one single teddy bear. And as you can see behind me, it's grown exponentially since then. And we were watching people come up today that a lot of people cried. You know, people were just very sad. Some people were relieved that this 4-year-old girl, Javeayah Harris, is now put to rest. But one thing that was really consistent throughout all the community members that we talked to earlier was that they've just been really impressed with how the community has banded together during this time. What started with a single teddy bear.
I saw the lady on that put the first teddy bear out, and I said, okay, that's something I can do.
Looks very different a week later.
Me and my son came out, put it, and the next day we came, it had grown so.
And while
by July 1st, the search for Javeayah Harris had entered its second day. Helicopters overhead, drones scanning the tree line, a command post that hadn't slowed down since the first 911 call came in. That same day, in a hospital delivery room, Michilae Harris gave birth. Her father, Javeayah Harris, later told reporters where he had been that day. Running laundry, stopping at a convenience store, the kind of errands that carry no weight until you learn what was happening at the exact same hour. When he turned back onto his road, he saw a police vehicle, then a drone in the sky above his own house. It took him a moment to understand the activity wasn't somewhere nearby. It was at his home. He said he hurried the rest of the way, walked in, and asked what was going on. Somewhere in that same short window of time, a newborn was placed into the custody of a family member. A search for one daughter was intensifying by the hour. Her sister was taking her first breath. There is no framework for holding both of those realities at once. A family in celebration and a family under search, existing inside the same 24 hours, inside the same house. This is the moment the case stops being a straightforward missing child story. Because for the first time, the timeline itself becomes evidence.
This community has banded together, so no one forgets the name Javeayah Harris.
And we've got to believe this is what, it's hard to say, but for some kind of reason, we've got to take something out of this. And all we can
Under investigation, both parents were denied bond this afternoon for their additional charges of desecration of human remains.
4 days of searching, thousands of acres covered, and nothing. On July 3rd, with no sign of Javeayah, the search was scaled back. Quietly, without the fanfare of the days before, command posts that had been full of volunteers and law enforcement began to empty out. The next morning, Sheriff Marty Sawyer stood in front of cameras and said what investigators had come to believe. It was already too late the moment that 911 call came in. Their evidence now showed Javeayah had likely been dead for about a month, weeks before her mother ever picked up the phone. A search built on urgency had been chasing a timeline that no longer existed. Somewhere in the gap between missing and a month gone sat an answer nobody outside that house yet had. And it was about to arrive in the form of 2 arrests.
Thank you for being here today, especially the citizens of Aiken that's come in. Thank you for being here. And I'm here to provide an update on the investigation where we've been investigating the death of 4-year-old Javeayah Harris. These updates never get easier to share. This past week has been heart-wrenching for everyone, but we've seen an outpouring of support in Aiken County and a massive joint law enforcement effort to search for and now to seek justice for Javeayah Harris. Personally, there's some very harsh words that I would like to use about Johmarea and Michilae and their actions. But I will not do that. And I will not do that to protect and maintain the integrity of this case. But I will tell you this. I will not refer to them as mom and dad or mother or father. They don't deserve that title. I stand before you saying this is one of the most difficult, deeply disturbing, and emotionally taxing investigations this office has ever worked, and has weighed heavily on the sheriff's office, all these other law enforcement agencies, all these people behind me that's worked tirelessly to bring this to an end, and it's weighed heavily on our community. I am truly sickened to share what this investigation has uncovered. From the moment Javeayah was reported missing, the sheriff's office, as well as our law enforcement partners and first responders, we responded with urgency, determination, and compassion. What started as an exhaustive and complex search quickly grew to something that I would have never imagined. Now understand, I cannot discuss all the details. We should have stopped the train. Understand that I cannot discuss all the specific details in this case. But at this time, I can share that a few human remains were recovered in an area known as Cedar Creek Reservoir, also known as Stumpy Pond in Fairfield County. These remains were immediately sent to the State Law Enforcement Division, and through analysis, the DNA of the remains are consistent with being the biological offspring of Johmarea and Michilae. I want to also share with you that through forensic evidence, statements, and analysis, extensive and deliberate efforts were made to destroy and conceal evidence following Javeayah's death. Our information reveals the use of corrosive chemicals and other tools that were used to accelerate the destruction of her little body. After this was completed, these two individuals poured what remains were left of Javeayah into the Cedar Creek Reservoir. These subjects went through great lengths to cover their repulsive and revolting actions. In my 37-year career in law enforcement, I have never, ever heard of anything so horrific. As a result of this information, it's unlikely that the entirety of Javeayah's body or any other remains from this point forward will be recovered. And I'll say this again, we had all hoped and prayed to find her body, but with the information we've uncovered, that's simply not possible. I want to also announce additional charges for destruction and desecration of human remains have been filed against these two individuals. I know this is heartbreaking for anyone who's followed this case. It's heartbreaking for our office. For all the law enforcement across the state that's worked on this case, countless hours to find every piece of evidence with the hope of bringing Javeayah home. It's heartbreaking to our community. Our commitment has been to pursue the truth, regardless of how difficult it may be. While no announcement can lessen the profound loss in this case, our commitment remains unchanged. Today is not only about the evidence recovered, it's about a child whose life was taken far too soon. While today marks a painful chapter in this case, it does not end our work. Our investigators will continue to pursue every lead, examine every piece of evidence, and work closely with the Second Circuit Solicitor's Office to ensure that justice for Javeayah is pursued. I ask you to pray. Pray for Javeayah and her extended family, our staff, all these other law enforcement agencies, and this community. Again, I want to thank all these law enforcement partners, local, state, federal, other first responders who assisted in this case. But from the time I announced at my last press conference that the investigation had taken us outside of Aiken County, I specifically want to thank the State Law Enforcement Division, South Carolina DNR, and Sheriff Will Montgomery in the Fairfield County Sheriff's Office. These DNR divers spent hours and hours and hours searching. Finally, I want to again thank our community. Throughout this investigation, you've demonstrated compassion, encouragement, patience, and prayers. We recognize the emotional impact this case has had on so many, and we thank you for standing with us. Together, this community has shown that even in the face of tragedy, compassion, unity, and service remain stronger than the darkness we've encountered. I'm going to take a few questions, but if it didn't come from this press release, you're probably not going to get much more.
Sheriff, without this investigation, I don't know any additional charges on the parents. At some point, do you have plans to push for the death penalty?
At this point in time, with what they're charged with, that would be a question for the solicitor's office later down the line. I don't want to speak for them.
And what have you guys learned from relatives or other close family about when Javeayah was lastly alive, and whether or not anyone of the close family members had raised any concerns about not seeing her for an extended period of time?
I'm just going to say the same thing I said at the last press conference. We believe that she had been dead for about a month before the 911 call.
Has there been any evidence that you guys have found in the last few days, or when it comes to the child abuse standpoint towards Javeayah, that was it one specific incident that potentially killed her, or was it long gone?
I can't speak on that. I know the answer, I'm just not going to give that.
You all have on the pink ties and the pink ribbons. Can you elaborate on what that means to you? And mention seeing the community here and put together this vigil tonight. What does this moment mean to you?
Well, everybody's put on Facebook to wear pink. The pink's her favorite color. We just thought it would be, we care about her like everybody else does. We have people that'll be at the vigil tonight. I have a previous speaking engagement, so I can't be there. May come late, but we just want to show that we're human beings. We're not robots. We care about the people in this community, especially a 4-year-old little girl. This is the most disturbing thing you'll ever see.
All right, one more question.
How did you know to go to Fairfield County and look at the
I'm not going to. Our investigation led us there. Okay. Thank y'all, and thank you, community.
On July 4th, Javeayah Harris and Michilae Herring were arrested. Both were charged with homicide by child abuse. Herring faced an additional charge, filing a false police report. The warrant said something the public search never could have. Both parents had confessed. The next day, in separate hearings, a judge denied bond to both of them. 4 days after their daughter had been reported missing, her parents were in custody, accused of causing her death, and then lying about it to the entire county that had searched for her. But even with 2 people behind bars, even with confessions on paper, one piece of the case was still unaccounted for: Javeayah herself. On July 6th, the arrest warrants were released to the public, along with the original 911 recording. And buried inside those warrants was a detail that changed the shape of the entire case. Herring had admitted to disposing of her daughter's body. She would not say where. The search shifted, away from Aiken County entirely, toward a location investigators wouldn't yet name. Divers from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources joined the effort. The Fairfield County Sheriff's Office became involved. For days, a new search took shape, hundreds of miles removed, in language and geography, from the backyard chicken coop where this story had started. And then, just as quickly as it appeared, that search seemed to stop. Roadblocks that had been up for days came down. Investigators went quiet. No confirmation, no denial, just silence. The kind of silence that, in an investigation like this, usually means something. If you've made it this far, you already understand this isn't a story built for shock value. It's built for the truth, however difficult that truth is. That's exactly the kind of documentary we make here, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the moment. On July 9th, Sheriff Sawyer stood at a podium again. This time, dozens of his staff stood behind him wearing pink, Javeayah's favorite color. He said his office had recovered a few human remains, found in a reservoir in Fairfield County known locally as Cedar Creek, or Stumpy Pond. He said the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division had tested them. The DNA was consistent with a biological child of both Javeayah Harris and Michilae Herring. Then he described what had been done before those remains ever reached the water. Corrosive chemicals, tools, a deliberate effort, he said, to destroy and conceal what was left of a 4-year-old girl. He called it something he had never encountered in 37 years of law enforcement. New charges followed for both parents. Destruction and desecration of human remains, added to the homicide charges already filed. Sawyer said something else that day, something with no room left for hope. It's unlikely, he told the room, that the rest of her body will ever be found. What began as a search to bring a missing child home ended as a recovery of what little could be recovered, and a case that will now move to a solicitor's office, to bond hearings, to a courtroom that has not yet delivered a single verdict. The community has already answered in its own way. Vigils, memorials built from stuffed animals and pink balloons. A petition circulating for something they're calling Javeayah's Law. The court proceedings are still ahead. So are the questions this case has not yet answered, including one a reporter asked directly at that final press conference, about whether there had been warning signs before any of this happened. The sheriff said he knew the answer, he didn't share it. For now, what's confirmed is this: a 4-year-old girl who loved pink was gone for 30 days before anyone outside her home knew to look for her. And the 2 people who were supposed to protect her were the only ones who knew the truth the entire time.
Some of Javeayah's family members live right near that search area, walking distance. I met them Saturday as they came there looking for answers. Maybe now, as painful as those answers are, they have a peaceful place to grieve and a peaceful place to begin healing.